It's funny how success looks different depending on where you're standing. A few years ago, success to me looked like closing a certain amount of deals a year, getting a certain amount of income, and buying that first property. Now, I'm sitting back and realizing I might have had successful moments all along and just not taking the time to actually acknowledge them. And that's why over the past couple of weeks, I've been sitting here thinking and asking myself, what are we really chasing? And what problem are we really trying to solve by becoming successful? And that's what I want to break down this week and get into it and see what you guys are thinking. Because as we're all getting caught into this rat race, as you know, some of us are getting older. Not sure how old you are listening to this right now, but I'm assuming you're probably around my age, probably, early 30s, maybe late 20s. And like I said, as we're all getting caught up in this rat race and trying to chase the next, thing that we want to buy, or the next trip that we want to go on, or the next, milestone, whatever that might be, sometimes I think we need to take a step back and be like I said earlier, what problem are we really trying to solve? And when we get there, are we going to be happy? So that's the topic I want to get into this week. So let's get into it. And we'll be back in 3, 2, 1. We gone. Welcome back, family, to another episode of the First Sip Podcast. I'm your host, Dikembe Smith. And this week, as I sip on my lemon ginger tea, this is really hitting the spot, by the way, we're going to be diving into this whole idea of success. Right? Because this is something I brought up probably 2 months ago now, actually, when I was at the family summit that I talked about, and we were sitting around the fire, and, I was really just, we were talking about the idea of, what is it that we're really working towards? Are we happy? Do we feel like we're kind of just, spinning our wheels, going nowhere fast? And I think for some of us to really open our eyes to maybe, realizing that some of the things that we chase after or tell ourselves that we need, we probably don't need them, and we're probably just chasing after them just to compare ourselves to something else that we see, or another milestone that we've seen someone else achieve. And now we tell ourselves, you know what? That's something that I have to have for myself. And you really don't know how it fits into your overall equation, to the overall process or vision that you have for your life, but you start chasing after it anyway. So, like I said, I want to dive into this a little bit more this week. It kind of explores some different things that might, have us in this Delulu land, chasing after, like I said, things that we really don't need, and see how we can kind of maybe, redefine what we can have as our scoreboard, right? What are the metrics that we're looking for, really? Is it strictly financial metrics, like I said, a certain amount of money that we're earning, or are there other things that we can consider, like time, having freedom, having the ability to spend time with your friends whenever you want? So what metric are we really considering and saying, okay, like this is what I consider as being successful? So let's move into the first part, which is that moving finish line. Right. You ever set a goal for yourself and take a step back after you've hit it and realize like, man, that was good. I hit that goal. Now what's next? Because if you're like me, that is something that happens quite often. You might set a short-term goal, something maybe a little bit longer, and you get to that point. It might come a little bit faster than you thought. And now you're sitting back looking at it and saying, okay, well, what's next? What can I go after now? Because you're just constantly trying to chase after that next thing. You get caught up in that high of just achieving, and you don't have enough time. You don't make enough time really to sit back and be like, wow, look at the work that it was required for me to reach this point, all the time that it took me to get here, everything that I had to learn to get to this point. We just keep the wheel going and say, okay, what's next? What else can I achieve, right? What other thing can I chase after? And I think for, like I said, if you're like me, this can add a lot of unnecessary stress to your life. I know, sometimes you tell yourself, okay, this is exactly what I want to be doing. But also, I think we have to kind of be that voice on the other shoulder and tell ourselves, just because it's something that you want to be doing doesn't mean it's something that you should be doing right now, right? Or maybe it's something that you can put off further down the road so you can give yourself time, like I said, to appreciate what it is that you just accomplished. And like I said, when I think back to certain things that I've accomplished, whether it be from when I was in my bodybuilding competition, or, landing certain positions when I was still working in banking, to getting my real estate license. These were all different milestones that I was looking at and saying, wow, this would be so great. I can't wait, to see what my life would be like at that point. And I'm telling you, once those things came, right, once the competition was done and, like you're sitting back and it's like, okay, great. I put in 12 weeks of work. All right, what's next? I just really enjoyed it probably for like 3 hours. And now I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, okay, what's next? Same thing with when I landed my first, like, quote unquote, big job, right? I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, wow, this is so great. I got my foot in the door to a job that's really going to help me get to this next point in my life and things that I want to do. I'm going to be able to travel more, save more money, invest in different things. And that excitement lasted probably 2 days. I remember I called my parents. I was very happy. I called my best friend. I was like, yo, just landed this job. This is great. Whatever it is, I'm making X amount, blah, blah, blah. Huge jump from what I was making at my last job. And then I'm telling you, a month later, 2 months later, you're sitting there thinking, okay, what's next? What's the next job that I should be shooting for, right? What's the next position? Because for me, I think I really get caught up in the idea of what the milestone would look like of okay, once I get there, once I reach that end point, man, this is how I'm going to feel and this is how my life is going to change. But then reality comes and you get to those points and you realize life really didn't change as much as you thought it was. You're still doing the same activities, you're still hanging out with the same people, you're still interested in the same things. So what is it that you are really chasing? And that's where I realized for me, especially in my 20s, a lot of what I was chasing was on the monetary side. It was trying to get to a certain income level so I can say, okay, now that I'm making this money, now I can do all these other things, right? Now I can buy my home. Now, I can start thinking about traveling to these different places that I've always wanted to go to. Instead of making the time, right, like along the journey and saying like, hey, can I make these things happen right now while I'm working my way up to, that certain income point? No, I'm just telling myself, adding the stress and saying, oh, I can't do these things because of X, Y, Z, right? And until I get to that finish line, I have to do all these sacrifices, not really do anything that I would genuinely enjoy doing, right? But like I said, you get to that finish line and the same thing that you said, okay, like, man, once I reach that point, I'm going to start enjoying these things. Nope. You tell yourself, okay, that's not enough. To really do these things, I need to be able to make X amount more, right? So let me put my head down and continue to grind and grind and grind. And you realize, like I say, you just keep pushing the finish line back in whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, because you really don't have, a clear idea on what it is that you're looking for at the end of the day. You just get caught up in, like I said, the delusion of what that vision looks like in your head and saying, wow, man, think about all the problems I won't have if I'm making 6 figures a year. Then you realize you sit around people who are making 6 figures a year and you hear about the problems they have. And it's like, well, damn, I didn't realize you guys still dealt with this stuff. Oh yeah, no, we still deal with it. It's just at a different scale. And I was actually joking about this with my dad, because it's the same thing when it comes to business. You sit back and you think about, okay, man, once I get to this certain level of, clients on a monthly basis, I'll really be great because now my, revenue is going to be at this point and I won't have these different problems. Wrong. Now you have different problems of how are you following up with everybody now who's reaching out, right? Are you attending to the clients that you currently have and not miscommunicating with them? Are you managing all the tasks now that you have to do throughout the day? Because with more business comes more responsibility, right? That's kind of like a Spider-Man quote there. So the things that you're asking for, are you ready to deal with them once they do come? And that is something, like I said, you talk about adding stress. That's another thing that really gets added on that place. All the stuff that you're asking for, it's going to come with a level of responsibility. And we have to ask ourselves, are we ready to deal with that? Or do we just like the idea of what it sounds like? If you are ready to deal with it, by all means, keep going, keep pursuing it. And once you reach that point, please take time to appreciate it. Because like I said, there's nothing worse than finally hitting that milestone and just letting it go by and not even taking a second to acknowledge all the work that you did to get to that point. Right. So that's where I want to move into the next part where I was talking about how can we really redefine, like what that scoreboard looks like. What are the metrics that we're considering when it's like, okay, this is what I consider being successful. Because like I said, I remember sitting at the bank and my idea of being successful was having time off, right? Like having freedom, because I kept racking my brain and I was like, you know what, no matter how much I work and how much money I have saved or invested, if this is like my lifestyle and my schedule, I'll never have the time that I personally want to have in my life to do the things I want to do. So success to me looks like being able to wake up on a Tuesday and say, okay, maybe I don't have to start working today until 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. Or maybe I want to start working today at 8 a.m., right? What does it look like? What does my day look like? How can I manage my day because I have the freedom to do it? That is what success looked like to me back in, like let's say 5 years ago when I was still sitting in the office at the bank. Now today, of course, that has completely changed because now I have different goals in mind, things I've planned out And that's really because of, once again, what are some things that I've now been exposed to? What are my experiences now that I've gotten to, get into a level of time freedom now that I can travel? I was joking with my parents the other day, hey, if you want me to come down to Guyana next week, I can come down to Guyana next week. We just got to make sure the ticket prices are right. And these are things that I used to sit back and say at the bank. And I was like, man, I would love the ability to be able to just travel and be able to just move around freely. If my friends say, hey, let's go and do X, Y, and Z, then let's go and do that, right? And I still find myself now sacrificing, certain, hangouts, certain things, because I'm telling myself, oh, I'm not at that point yet. I still need to work harder, right? I need to skip out on a couple things because I need to put my head down, save this money, invest it in my business, and continue to grow and get this thing stabilized to the point of whatever that next finish line looks like, right? So like I said, that goes back to the first point that I was talking about before, about how we're moving that finish line because of whatever that thing is, right, that we're considering successful. And that's why I said over the past couple of weeks, I've really been thinking about this and saying, okay, what do I consider as being successful right now? And it still comes back to that thing that it was 5 years ago, which is that idea of being able to wake up and say, hey, if I want to have a nice slow morning, right, enjoy my first sip of the day and not have to worry about hopping in the car and commuting for an hour down the highway to a job that I hate, then I think I've reached a pretty good point of success right now for where I'm at, right? Obviously, this isn't the end all be all, and there's other things I'm going to continue to pursue because, I have that kind of mindset. I'm a goal oriented person and I want to continue to, see how far I can push certain things. But like I said, I've also gotten to a point and realized like, yo, you can really sit back and start enjoying certain things now because like you have a roof over your head, you're able to put food on your table, you have a car that you like very much, you're not still driving around in a 96 Toyota Camry that breaks down every other week. And once again, if you were to look back and ask yourself, if I was to look back and ask myself 10 years ago, yo, would you be happy with the lifestyle that you have right now and the things that you're able to do? I would be ecstatic. I would be like, yo, I pretty much made it. Get my money up just a little bit more, and I'm really there. I'm really living the life that I said I wanted to live. But then fast forward to today, I would sit back and say like, oh man, no, I got this bill coming up. I got this thing coming up. Only God knows what unexpected thing is going to pop up, in life. And you just get caught up, in the day-to-day, rat race, like I was talking about in the beginning. And you forget like, yo, years ago, this is exactly the lifestyle that I said I wanted to live, but I didn't consider the type of problems that would come with living this type of lifestyle, right? So that's something that, like I said, I've really been sitting back and racking my brain and asking other people, asking my friends. I'm like, what does success look like to you? I was talking to one of my best friends the other day, and he was asking me, like, what do you, do you think happiness is a choice? Do you think people really have the ability to choose to be happy in the moment? Or is it something that no matter what you do, it's just sometimes fleeting? And like I said, for me, I think a lot of us, 90% of us, can choose to be happy in the moment and say like, yo, I have something that I can probably be grateful for. I'm just not taking the time to acknowledge it because I'm just caught up in, all the distractions and all the noise, whether that be social media, whether that be personal life, whether that be you at work. There is so much stuff that pulls us out from, like I said, from being able to be grateful and to be able to be happy in the moment and say like, yo, I'm pretty okay right now. It's the external noise that's really killing my happiness, my idea, my ability to realize that like, yo, I'm living a pretty successful life right now. So like I said, sometimes you got to quiet the noise, find a way, whatever it is. And I've talked about this plenty of times on the podcast. So, pick whichever it is that you're going to do. Meditate, right? Take some time to go out for a walk daily, find a friend to talk to, and kind of like bounce these ideas off of and say like, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm stressed out about. So you can have somebody that can kind of check you in the moment and be like, yo, you're kind of just living, like I said, in that Delulu land in your head, and you need to take a step out and look around and realize just how good you have it right now. Sometimes, and I know we don't want to compare ourselves to other people, and this is actually the final thing that I was going to end off with, because this is how I feel we really get lost in a lot of it, is that comparison trap. Because, we also start looking at what other people have or other milestones that they're hitting that we may not even wanted to hit for ourselves. And we say, wow, look at that. That would be so nice, right? It's like I said, like it would be like me driving around in my nice car right now and looking at somebody else in another nice car and being like, wow, that must be really nice to have. right? And it's like it's everything that I got around me, right? Like the thing that I wish I had years ago. I got nice heated seats, got a nice dash with a nice display, everything that I wanted. But no, now I'm looking at somebody else and saying, wow, now I want that thing. Not knowing what kind of stressors come with that thing. Only God knows what that car note is, how much the insurance is, because I know mine is already too high. So I can only imagine, right? If you got something on the more luxury side, then what are you dealing with? Same thing when you're looking at somebody's home, you're looking at their family, you're looking at the things that they buy and wear. You don't know what kind of headaches come with that. None of us know what kind of headaches these people are dealing with and waking up with every day to kind of sustain that lifestyle, right, that they've created for themselves. And now what do? We see that and say, oh, well, now I want to adopt that lifestyle that they have. Well, you better be ready to adopt their headaches as well, because if not, you're going to be sitting there and asking yourself, why did I ever ask for these things? This is not what I wanted to do. This is not what I wanted for my life. And now I'm stuck here trying to figure out how to get out of this, right? How can I kind of reverse the things that I'm now stuck with and the things you've been asking for, and how can I get out of this rat race? How can I get back to a lifestyle, to a level of freedom, to a level of I can do whatever the hell I want whenever I want to? And you really take a step back and realize, like, it's like, yo, I don't need that much. I have pretty much 70%, 80%. If you're somebody who listens to this podcast, I'm assuming you're probably not in a decrepit, very low, impoverished state. And if you are, you should probably stop listening to this podcast and you should probably get back to work, right? Like DM me, text me. I can recommend some things you could probably start doing today to go out there and start making some money. But like I said, if you're somebody who I would assume is probably in a decent position, what are we adding all the extra stress for? Like what I know, and like I said, I'm not saying to not be a high achiever, to not go after things, but go after things that will truly make your life better. Go after things that will truly help you look back years down the road and be like, wow, I'm happy I made that decision to pursue that thing because it helped me get to where I am now. Not, oh man, I wish I had never started, investing in this, or I wish I had never purchased this thing because now look at all the headaches I have. And this is not even something that I really wanted. I would have been happy maybe with a couple extra $1,000 a month, but nope, I wanted to deal with the headache of somebody who I heard was making, $10,000 a month or $15,000 a month. Yeah, that comes with different headaches, right? So ask yourself once again, are you ready to deal with what that comes with? Or do you just need to, like I say, take a second with yourself, go on a nice long walk for a couple, take a nice, for a nice couple minutes, an hour, take 2 hours, and really sit there and ask yourself like, yo, what would be better? What would help me improve my life right now? What would help me feel like I'm more successful? And then create a plan, right? Go into ChatGPT, talk it out with ChatGPT and say, hey, this is where I'm at right now. This is where I want to get to. These are some of the ideas. These are some of the things that I'm good at. And I'm not trying to have, a crazy mix up to my life, but what are some things that I can start exploring to get to that level of success that I want to achieve? And trust me, it'll help you come up with a nice little blueprint, some ideas to explore. Like I said, if you can't figure this out on your own and you have some trouble, kind of mapping out your ideas and really figuring out what that next step can be, it's a good tool to use, right? Something that didn't exist 5-10 years ago. So if you're somebody who, like I said, who's kind of scattered all over the place and you don't know what that next step is, utilize these tools. They're available to you, right? So use them. They're out there. And like I said at the beginning, stop comparing yourself to other people, right? And when I'm saying this to you, I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to myself, because you're doing okay. All the things that you were asking for years ago when you were sitting there in another position, looking out the window and saying, man, look at all the other people having fun, enjoying their day. Well, it's years down the road now. And now you can look back and say, you know what? The same thing that I was dreaming for years ago, I've achieved most of it, right? Not making all the money that you want to be making yet, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you're not ready to deal with that type of responsibility. But when that time does come, you'll be ready. So take a second, take a step back and appreciate where you are right now, right? So like I said, let me know what you guys think. What problem are you really trying to solve when it comes to this idea of being successful? And do you think you're far off? Do you think you're pretty close? Are you there right now, right? Are you realizing that after listening to this, that, you know what? This idea of success that I've been chasing, I'm actually pretty close. When I look around, I got a nice family. I got great friends. I got a good job that I enjoy and I don't hate the people I work with. Yeah, life's pretty good. I'm pretty successful, but there's some other things that I would like as well. So, because if you're a part of that, then I think we're a part of the same tribe. So Let me know what you guys think, but I'm not going to end it off there because, you know, I'm back with my content Rex of the week. And this week I got a Netflix show served up for you. I think that's what I had for you guys last week, but I don't remember 100%. But we're back with another Netflix series. And this one I got for you is the Halo series. Now, this was actually a Paramount original show, but they moved it over to Netflix, right? They got the rights to start streaming it. So if you know anything about the Halo video game world, right, it's pretty much they took that and made a show around it. So if you're a fan of the Halo game series, this might be a niche content rec this week. But if you're a fan of the video game, then you're going to be a fan of the show. I'm telling you, check it out. They got all the weapons. They got all the characters. The story isn't 100. It doesn't follow, you know, 100% of like what the Halo storyline is in the video game, but it does a good job, right? And like I said, it's something that you could throw on and genuinely enjoy. Like I said, when you're not watching the games, because like I said, we're right in football season. Eagles just had their first loss. We don't need to talk about that, but this is something you can watch, right? When you're not watching the games, come home from work, you want to throw something on to enjoy. Check this show out, right? Halo, it's on Netflix. Trust me, you're going to enjoy it. But that's all I got for you guys this week. So until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and as always, enjoy your first sip.